Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a Triad production. I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. And today I'm joined by Dr. Sam Adeyemi. Sam is a global speaker, strategic leadership expert, minister, and author who has influenced millions of people on success and leadership through radio, television, conferences, and information products for more than 25 years now. As a global conference speaker, Sam has addressed audiences in several countries, including appearing at the Global Leadership Summit, a global conference attended by over 400,000 leaders in 130 plus countries. Sam has trained thousands of leaders through the Daystar Leadership Academy, which has graduated over 45,000 people since he founded it in 2002. He currently serves as a coach and a mentor to hundreds of CEOs around the world. In 2022, Sam published his book, Dear Leader, Your Flagship Guide to Successful Leadership. Today, we're excited to have Sam with us to discuss successful leadership and our duty to influence and serve others for the greater good. Sam, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Graham. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's really nice to have you. You know, as we talk about leadership today, Sam, I'm curious, who have been some of the most influential leaders in your life?
Well, thank you. I would say first, my dad and my mom, right? I believe that the family is one of the most important leadership institutions in the world, if not the most important, just for the fact that the psychologists tell us that a child's values are pretty much shaped fundamentally by the time they're 7. So I know that what I saw from home, especially experiencing love, right? Experiencing kindness. My mom has a reputation for her kindness, right? To family members, to strangers, you know, how my dad treated my mom. And by the way, they've been together now 57 years,
Wow.
right? And then the kind of relationship that we had with my siblings, to a large extent, I think those influenced me and the way I treat people, because leadership is essentially about how you treat people. It's about relationships. And there's a memory in my mind about when I was a child and I loved to play soccer. And the first time my dad bought a soccer ball and brought it home, I was so excited. I wasn't expecting it. And he would buy for me, like once a year, he would buy a new ball for me. When I was a teenager, I was hitting the ball against the wall one day. And on the apartment, we were on the second story. On the first floor, it was the neighbor's house. And I was hitting the ball against the wall between windows, the neighbor's windows. And my dad looked from the balcony and said, "You've got to be careful. Be careful. Those windows are there." I don't know why I had so much confidence in my professionalism. I was so sure I wasn't going to make any mistakes until I had the glass break. And I thought, I knew that I deserved some beating because I had been warned. But I was amazed. I was surprised when my dad just brought money and told me exactly where to go buy the window panes. And I thought this was a trick. He just wanted to be able to lay hold of me, but none of that happened. And I experienced mercy, right? And it's not every time somebody makes a mistake that you use that as an opportunity to whip them, right?
Oh, I love that.
So, and then I would say also I've met some of the people, especially in church leaders that influenced my lives. Some of my pastors, they did a great deal. And then there are people I met through their books before I got to meet them, right? And there are people I have not met, but whose stories have influenced me phenomenally, because when I read their books, it's like I'm sitting next to them. The late Pastor Cho in South Korea, Pastor Rick Warren in Saddleback, and then John Maxwell I have met, but I read his books on leadership for over 2 decades before we even met at all.
Mhm.
But I would mark almost every line and apply them. Then in Nigeria, the pastors who influenced me include George Adeboye, David Oyedepo, especially. So I have quite a number of people like that who've modeled leadership for me.
I love the idea that I think our family is the greatest institution in the world that can do so much good. And it really creates a template or a model that we can, well, we use whether we recognize it or not. We work within that model in other areas of our lives. We're going to come back in this podcast today, Sam. We're going to talk about some of the strongholds that you have identified with people and how the strongholds that can keep one from experiencing their truest potential oftentimes is due to early experiences in their life that might hold them back. We'll flag that and come back to it.
Right.
But for right now, on the other side of that coin, you're saying, boy, our early influences in our family, when there's love and there's kindness, when there's caring, when there's listening, when there's proper discipline, not punishment. Discipline, we do something for our children. It's whether it's a consequence of whatever it may be, we're doing it for the child to grow. Punishment is I do something to you. Discipline is I do something for you as your loving parent. And I love the word mercy that you use. Mercy is, grace is when we receive something that we don't deserve. And mercy is when something is withheld from us that we probably do deserve.
Right.
We might need a ticket from a police officer for speeding, but he says, you know what, I'm going to give you just a pass.
Right.
That's mercy. And your dad sounds like he was giving you a great lesson of here's how you handle something when something goes wrong. But these early influences really being so important in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, tell me what you think about this idea of, what's happening in our lives now, Sam, in our world, let's just say in our nation. What's happening in our lives right now in this day and age that presents us with such a need for good leaders?
Thank you, Graham. I would say uncertainty, the disruptions, the unpredictability, they create anxiety about the future.
Yes.
And the need for some sense of direction, and that's why people need leaders.
Yes.
That's why people need leaders. People want to be able to make a sense of what's going on, especially considering that we just came through the COVID experience, right? An experience that only few people on the planet were alive the last time it happened. And even though they were, they were even too young to remember whatever may have happened, right? Yeah. Because this thing happens usually 100 years apart. So even leaders were feeling their way through the experience. And that was where the qualities of leaders began to shine through. The values of leaders began to shine through. You would see that soon after things began to calm down, you had big shifts. You had the great resignation. People were resigning their jobs en masse. People were shifting, making decisions because people's value systems changed. The human psyche changed. Some leaders demonstrated that they value profit over human life. Yeah. Some demonstrated that they value political power over human life. And then once people realized, oh my God, they don't care about me as much as I thought, yes, I've got to take charge of my life right now and make my decisions for myself, right? So those shifts have happened. And I mean, in some parts of the world was a bit better because the political systems or government structures are already set in the way that the resources of the country are invested in the citizens. But in some other parts of the world, citizens were left to themselves. No safety nets, no welfare programs. And now you've had inflation hitting the world on a global level. And it's worse, especially in developing economies right now. Many people are sliding down below the poverty line. So people are making decisions. I'm from Nigeria by birth, and you just had middle income earners and young people shift out of Nigeria en masse, just looking for countries where they could just live better lives, so to speak. And then you look at the news right now, or you listen to the news, you read the news on social media, and it's one upheaval or the other, one crisis after the other. Remember, as soon as things were coming down, we had the war, Russia and Ukraine, and it affected the whole world. Now we're dealing with Israel and Russia. In Africa, there's war in Sudan. Nobody's even talking about that anymore, but millions of people have been displaced and all that. So there's so much instability. People want to make a sense of their lives. And one of the major things leaders do is to give people perspective, because leaders have vision. I describe vision as the ability to see people, places, and things, not just the way they are, but the way they could be. Seeing people, places, and things the way they could be. And that's why a leader can give some sense of the future, give some sense of direction, and give hope. We need a lot of that right now.
I like that idea. I think with anxiety and lacking direction, instability, and uncertainty, the way you're describing it, it lends itself to new and oftentimes better things having a chance to develop, almost like a new paradigm that can be formed. It's also an opportunity for bad leaders that are selfish, want power, want the money, the things you were describing earlier, to get a foothold as well. And when people are feeling anxious and uncertain, they're vulnerable and they can be led down directions that unknowingly they feel like they're having some certainty brought, into their lives, but in fact are not. Oftentimes they're being led in wrong ways. But you see the best leaders are those that want to inspire. They see adversity in certain ways. They influence others by doing certain things, and they recognize strongholds, as I mentioned earlier. So let me just kind of name a couple of things and fill in the blank for me. Leaders inspire others with
A vision, the vision of a better future.
yes.
Mhm.
Leaders see adversity as
Opportunity for creativity.
nice. Leaders influence others by
Their character.
hmm,
Mhm.
very good. And leaders recognize that strongholds function as what?
As obstacles in people's minds, and they help people over those barriers.
Yeah, really good. What's been your favorite part in working to develop and encouraging leaders and your experience for good and the importance of good leaderships right now? What's your favorite part of this?
Seeing people's lives change,
Hmm.
seeing people who did not believe in themselves, gain confidence, catch visions, and turn their lives around in amazing ways.
Hmm.
I mean, I have seen, because I've been at this now for about 3 decades, and I have seen people succeed in dramatic ways,
Hmm.
especially because I'm very ambitious. Okay. So, and all the efforts that I was making to succeed, to grow big, were not working out until I made a shift. Until one day I just realized this thing is not about you. It's not about you succeeding. And an inspired thought just came into my mind. You will not find the definition of success until you help other people to succeed.
Yes.
It made me just turn the focus from myself to other people and to begin to ask, okay, so what do they need? What are their
Yes.
problems? And because this was in Africa, poverty came number one. It was like, okay, so how have I been addressing the poverty problem? That's why I began to teach entrepreneurship. I made a big deal of it. I was teaching, you need to start a business of your own. It's the quickest way for you to create wealth. The jobs are not there. There aren't enough jobs to go around. Okay, why don't you create a job for yourself? Start a business. Now, this was specifically some 23, 24 years ago. And then now I look around me and I see people who've become multimillionaires just because they were
Wow.
acting on those things that I said. At some point, the managing editor of the leading financial newspaper in Nigeria, when I was running those classes, and he had them, he said, you know what, can you transcribe these classes, put them in writing so we can give you a column in a newspaper? So I had a column. The newspaper was called The Financial Standard. And they found out that the column was selling the paper because I wasn't writing the way journalists write. Even they were trying to understand what was going on. And they realized professional journalists, they write in complex language. I was writing in layman's language. So the average person could understand what I was writing, right? So everywhere I go now, I meet people that attended those classes.
Mm.
I hear beautiful stories, right? I ran a training program here in Atlanta last year, and a gentleman came from Houston, Texas. He was a college student when I was running the classes in Lagos, Nigeria. He was an engineering student. And he said he was so broke that right now he tries to remember how he made his way to
Wow.
those classes that I was running, and he can't even remember. Anyway, he graduated, was able to move to Europe, did his master's degree, did his doctoral program in mechanical engineering. Now he's an entrepreneur, a business owner, told me he just bought a construction company in Texas and all of that. And that's amazing.
Yes, it is. We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Continuing education is both a requirement and a learning opportunity, but finding the right CE provider can be challenging. AATBS, a triad company, offers continuing education for psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, counselors, and behavior analysts. CE courses are available both individually and as part of our new All Access Pass. All Access Pass provides a library of over 250 unique courses. That's more than 800 hours of CEs, with new courses being added every month. As a special offer, Behavioral Health Today listeners can save 15% on CE purchases. Visit us at aatbs.com/BHT and enter promo code BHT15 during checkout. That's aatbs.com/BHT. Check out our library and check off your CE requirements today.
So this comes out of, though, this shift that you said occurred for you. You have a saying that says the measure of a leader's success is in contribution, not acquisition.
Absolutely.
And this is an example of where you're contributing into other people's lives, helping them see what their potential is, encouraging them and maybe guiding them to experience the fullest fruition of that potential, and then watching them just take off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was actually what happened. Just let me say that I was delivered from self-centeredness, right?
Okay.
Leadership is others-centric. It's centered on others, right? And success can be tricky. When people do their jobs well, they rise in their careers to the top. And then the structures built around success, they feed your ego.
Yes.
So you get the bigger title, the bigger office, the bigger salary, the bigger everything. And then before you know it, you have the bigger head. And something is telling you that there's something that is special about you that is not special about other people.
Yeah.
So many people have this idea that being a leader makes you superior to the people you're leading. And that's a mistake. Leadership is actually just an opportunity to broker other people's gifts, talents, and skills, and to produce amazing results with them. At the end of the day, I say, well, they may give you targets, or you may give yourself targets to meet in terms of profit and so on. but the greater measure of your leadership would be people and the changes that have happened in their lives.
I love the way you said that. Leadership is an opportunity to broker others' skills. You know, you're encouraging us, and what I've read that you've shared is that leadership is a skill that we can all learn, and that it's our duty to guide others, and that we need to recognize our individual power for leadership. But, you know, we typically say that the leader is just the guy or the gal up front, or the one that's been identified by a title. Is there then the possibility you're saying that it's not just about this upfront position or the title that someone is assigned, that everybody actually has an opportunity to be a leader in the position that they are currently in?
Oh, thank you, Graham. You know, this speaks to my leadership journey, right? The fact that I did not think I was leadership material at all for a start, because I am introverted. I used to be extremely shy. You know, I was influent in communicating with people. So if you found me in a group when I was very young and you asked someone to volunteer to lead the group, I would be the last person to offer myself if I did at all, right? And then I met, and then again, an older reverend gentleman in our church gave me a book, the first book ever that I read on leadership. The title was Christian Leadership by Donald S. Altman. I wrote down, the book was old then. This was on 35 years ago or so. The book was old even then. I had a notebook and I wrote down some of the major points in the book. If I don't remember anything, there is something I can't forget. The author argued that the theory that few people are born to lead, everybody else is born to follow.
Yes.
Said, these are old expired theories. They are dead. He said, if you especially have read the Bible and you see there that God created man in his own image, he said, that means to me that everyone has the potential to influence others.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And then the author listed the qualities of a leader and said, whoever you are reading this book, go through these qualities, you will see that you have some of them already. The ones you don't have, you can cultivate. And he was speaking to me. That was the day I was convinced that I'm a leader. I have leadership qualities because I couldn't argue against it. I had some of the qualities already. And then the ones that I did not have, then that became my personal development goals to cultivate that. Of course, as an introvert, one of the major things I saw was my lack of communication skills. So I then made that a goal. I bought How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, right? This shifted my concept about leadership. That it's not occupying a position that makes you a leader.
No.
Leadership is just ability to influence one or more people to achieve goals. And once you bring the definition down to that, then you realize that leadership happens at all levels. It happens everywhere. It happens in the family, it happens in the school, everywhere. Influence. So then it's about you discovering that you have influence ability and you cultivating that capacity to influence people.
Your story right here is one that I think is a great takeaway story and applies to everyone that's listening in, is that you're recognizing if we're made in God's image, these qualities are here. We may just not recognize them. And I'm going to go back to where you started today, is that the family environment is one of the most influential, probably the most influential parts of our lives. And so when you were given this book and you began to recognize, well, wait a minute, I never saw myself as a leader, but I have some of these qualities already in me.
Right.
That maybe I just didn't recognize. And I'm going to trust that others listening in may not recognize some of the qualities that they had or they have already in them, and maybe some areas that they need to grow. So I've got some of these things that maybe I need to both recognize and buff out to their fullest potential, and some areas that maybe, like public speaking, like you described, that I need to learn how to build this area of my life. Speak about the qualities that you recognized in yourself that maybe you hadn't fully appreciated once you had read this book and you began to kind of do your own inventory.
Okay, thank you. I would say first, honesty, right?
Mm.
That was one of the things I got from home. If you went to school and you brought something that belonged to somebody else, you had questions to answer in my home, right? My parents frowned seriously at you lying, right? That was a big sin, right? It was safer for you to say the truth than to tell a lie,
And take the punishment for it.
right?
Right.
So that was there, and I know that in leadership that builds trust, right? I saw empathy, right? Caring about others. Oh, yeah, that was there already. I saw humility. That was there already. My parents are humble. That's the simple truth. There was no measuring yourself against other people and trying to prove you're superior to anybody. Oh, no, right? Patience, right, with other people. I saw that. So those were some of the qualities I saw that I had already, apart from vision. Like I said, I am very ambitious, and my dad too used to be. So a lot of the discussions, in the living room in the evenings had to do with his plans and what we were going to do, what the future was going to look like, and all that.
I really like that. You encourage leaders. I think what you're doing right now is you're saying, how did I know that I've got these leadership qualities already in me? And there are some things that I might need to address and build a little further to be able to, in your case, communicate your message. But, I think what you're doing right now is if we can be involved in understanding our own leadership qualities, regardless if we're leading from the front or we're in the mix of people, whether we have a title or we're not, we're still have an opportunity to grow. There's a young singer that talks about grow where you're planted. And that's an opportunity to lead in the way that you're talking about. So if we can assess our strengths, then you talk about we can empower other people to assess their strengths and maybe even walk through them where their strengths and weaknesses are and help them align the things that they want to do around their strengths and empower them to further recognize that you can contribute probably more than you realize.
Oh, Graham, that is one of the sweetest dimensions to leadership. Most people undervalue what they have. Most people undervalue their own stories. Okay, so it was a transforming experience the first time I read a book about temperaments. It was a book by Tim and Beverly LaHaye, many years ago. And so it was like, wow. Because while I am introverted, my younger brother is extroverted. And while I thought, yes, it was friendly people like himself that would make good leaders, I also thought that he had problems, that there were some things that were wrong with him, right? Until I read the book on temperaments. And I saw that, okay, so the first miracle for me was discovering the strengths of my temperament. Because many people get criticized in childhood for their strengths. It's either they're told you talk too much or you keep quiet too much. You keep to yourself too much,
Yes.
And all that. And whatever it is they're saying that you do too much, that's likely to be where your strength is, right?
Probably so.
So I was amazed to see that my strength is in the thinking, right? That's actually a strength. That powers my creativity and all that. So that got me excited first. And then secondly, I also got to see the weaknesses of my temperament. Then I got to see the strengths of my brother's temperament. And my appreciation for him just soared What I thought was wrong with him
Yes.
was actually his talent, was his strength. And what he had, I did not have. So I run psychometric tests on my team members all the time, right? I run the strength test, run the personality test, run the temperament test, gifts test, and all that. In fact, there is one called team personality. Is it the well-being test? Team personality, that when you find yourself in a group, there's actually a particular kind of personality that you demonstrate. My kind of personality is described as the plant. We are the ideas person in the room. And then you have the other person that is the resource person. The moment you get to, well, can we find, and does anybody know anyone who can help us with this? That person is on their contact list in their phone, right?
Yeah.
And you have people like that. And you have those that are usually lost when we're describing the ideas and the strategy. They're just waiting. Look, you guys decide what we need to do, because they are executors, right? Project managers and things like that. So I run those tests just so that first, people can discover their uniqueness, their strengths. And secondly, so that I can know anyway, other team members can know. And instead of us focusing on one another's weaknesses,
Yes.
right, then we can actually have an all-star team where everyone is celebrated. So I think it's a real big deal in leadership to help people to find what is special about them and to fan it to flame.
I really appreciate what you're saying right now, because oftentimes the things that get the attention become someone's negative self-view. Well, you're too quiet, or you take up too much of the room, or you're too bossy. And maybe those, when you look at it this way, that these different temperaments are actually unique strengths incognito. They haven't been brought out yet and haven't been seen. And oftentimes they get negative attention versus saying, hey, you've got some really great extroverted abilities here. But maybe the downside of that, without there being any criticism around this, but the downside of that is maybe you're not the best listener at times. And maybe we could work on taking your strengths in that area, but also building the opportunity for you to take your charismatic approach in an extroverted way and bring others into the fold and learn how to listen. Or maybe you're too introverted and you don't seem like you have much to contribute, but you've got this great mind. So how can we bring out some of this thinking and into the room to be part of that team member? And so these, at one time, gets kind of a negative view, actually has some hidden strengths in there, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's amazing. I mean, like, for me, discovering, okay, there's power in all those thoughts, ideas that I create. There's a way my mind processes ideas, breaks down complex things, and I can put them in simple form that people can apply.
Yes.
Right?
Even the way you wrote in the articles, you wrote it in a layperson's words that they could relate to, they could take in, and then it translates into them being successful.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So I then thought that if I could just add speaking,
right,
to my thinking, then the thinking could be useful to the world.
See, what I love about that is we have these gifts,
right?
But if no one helps us cultivate them, or we don't know to take an inventory on them in a way that's non-judgmental, but to say, hey, these are my natural gifts, and what gets in the way? Maybe I'm a little shy, or maybe I really want to include other people, but I'm sometimes so extroverted, I fill the room and I don't listen very well. How do I build my listening skills? How do I build my speaking skills? How do I learn to put my ideas that are really quite good into words that other people can benefit from? So you're taking these strengths and helping people shape them in a way where they can be really not just effective, but in a collaborative way, part of a team that really makes a very successful group of people.
Absolutely. And we call that service. Right?
Yes.
You helping others with what you have, that's service. And that service is actually the essence of leadership.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Sam, I could talk with you all day long. It's just such great things. And I love the spirit and the heart that you bring to this. That's what's coming across to me most, along with all the other, theories and aspects and dimensions that you're bringing to this. And yet I know at the same time, we're kind of winding down for today. I want to come back with you at some point and talk about, different generational pieces. We've got a multi-generational workforce right now. And each of these, generations need certain things from different leaders. But most importantly, they need to be understood and seen and recognized for what they contribute uniquely. I'd love to come back and talk about that. And also these themes of vision casting and resourcefulness. And so there's a number of great things I'd love to have you come back on. But before we wind down just for today, before we have you come back at some point, I'd love you to give our listeners kind of a takeaway message. We need good leaders in our lives today and people that are willing to step up selflessly. Maybe it's the neighbor next door. Maybe it's the head of a company. Maybe it's a parent. But leave our listeners with a final message about this duty you say we all have in whatever position that we are in to be leaders for the benefit of others and the opportunity for each one of us to look within and to grow ourselves as we look for an opportunity to help others grow. Leave us with a takeaway message.
Thank you so much, Graham. One thing I like to say, everyone can lead.
Yeah.
Everyone can lead. And at the end of the day, our progress that's our collective progress, depends on our average leadership quotient. Average leadership quotient. When you have a team and just one person or two people are stars, they're professional, everybody else is weak, eventually the team would fail collectively, right? It's got to be everybody on the team, putting in their effort, their best effort. Then the average leadership quotient or the average skill or quality of the team determines our progress. Several years back, it was just before Super Bowl, and one of my friends here in Atlanta said, I know the team that's going to win. And he mentioned, and I said, how did you know? He said, the team with the better bench strength will win. Now, he happens to do his doctoral program in strategic leadership in the same university with me, but he was ahead of me a few years. So I paid attention to what he said. The team with the better bench strength will win. In other words, the quality of the people on the reserve bench is the same as the quality of the people on the field. Right. I said, wow. So my encouragement to everybody, when they say our leaders, if your mind always goes to the guys occupying the positions at the top, you're directing the traffic in the wrong way. You start with you, okay, and focus on developing your own leadership skills. By so doing, you're lifting your family, your organization, and our whole community upwards.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. Well, hey, as we wind down, I would love folks to learn more about you, Sam, and your book, Dear Leader, and your Daystar Leadership Academy. How can they do so?
Thank you so much. So first, to get my book, Dear Leader, it's on Amazon, right?
Okay.
Just check Dear Leader, Sam Adeyemi. And then to learn more about me and what I do, samadeyemi.com, SAMADEYEMI.com.
Really good. Well, I certainly appreciate all you're doing to influence successful leaders and the duty that you've taken on to be such an influence in right ways, but to do it with such a servant leader heart and for the greater good. You're doing some good things, Sam, and it's been great to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Graham. It's been a pleasure being with you, and I've enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you very much. I also want to thank you, our listeners, for joining Sam and me today. It's always great to have you with us. I want to remind you that this episode, its resources, and all of our other shows can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. Thanks again for being with us on the show, and we'll look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.